Moses' name is given to him by Pharaoh's daughter. The Bible says, if I'm not mistaken, in Exodus chapter 2, verse 10, and she called him Moshe because min hamayim meshitihu, I have drawn him from the water. And that is the only name Moses is known by. Right? That is the story. And most of us read that story and carry on. Right? It's called Moses because I drew him. Meshitihu is like Moshe. And so on. And we record the fact and we move on. However, if we were actually paying attention, we would notice that at this point the Bible is saying something deliberately wrong. There's a mistake there. Do you notice the mistake? Can anyone notice? Yeah?
Well, it's an Egyptian speaking, so it should be an Egyptian.
Exactly so. An Egyptian is giving Moses a name, so she should give Moses an Egyptian name. And indeed it is an Egyptian name. So the Bible, by giving it a Hebrew etymology, is clearly telling us something which, if we're awake, we will recognize is actually a mistake. So that is a misleading etymology, and the case of Moses is a misleading etymology, because if an Egyptian gives somebody a name, they give them an Egyptian name. And the Bible has already told us that, because when Joseph is made viceroy of Egypt, he is given by Pharaoh an Egyptian name, Tzafnat Paneach, which any 5-year-old Jewish child who knows a little bit of Bible recognizes. Tzafnat Paneach is not a Hebrew name, it's an Egyptian name. So, if we are actually alert, we actually say, now what does the name Moses actually mean? Does anyone know what the name Moses actually means in Egyptian? Pardon?
Child or begotten.
Child, sorry?
Or begotten.
Child or begotten, exactly so. The name Moses or Mez or Mesu is an Egyptian word that means child. And now the story gets terribly interesting, because according to many scholars at any rate, I know this is a fraught point historically and so on and so forth, but according to at least some scholars, the Pharaoh of the Exodus is Ramses II. And indeed the Bible has mentioned the name Ramses, although it doesn't attach it to the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh makes the Hebrews build store cities, and they are called Pitom v'Ramses. Now, if you listen carefully, Moses and Ramses are almost the same word, but they have one difference. Ramses has 2 extra letters, R-A, Ra. And what is Ra? The Egyptian sun god. And we know all about Ra. We don't need to have read any Egyptian literature. We know Ra from the Bible itself, because at a certain point, Pharaoh says to the Egyptians, and this is a wonderful pun here. I mean, he says, he says to Moses, don't provoke me anymore. Ru'u ki ra neged panechem. See, and the translation of that is, you are bent on evil, because the Hebrew for evil is Ra. But the Midrash and Rashi also point out that there's a double entendre here, because Ra is the name of the Egyptian sun god. So Pharaoh is warning the Egyptians, don't try and leave, because the sun god is against you. Are you with me? That's number one. So Ra has already been alluded to in the narrative itself. Secondly, only on understanding that the sun god has a unique place in the pantheon of Egyptian gods allows us to make sense of the 9th plague. If you go through the plagues, they begin, water turns to blood, then you get frogs, then you get lice, and they get more and more serious until plague 9, which is darkness. In other words, the light of the sun is blotted out. Now, in human terms, compared to the previous plagues, that's a minor inconvenience. Somebody switched the lights off for 3 days. But clearly, as the psalm says, God is doing judgment not only against Egypt, but against the Egyptian gods. The ninth plague is a judgment against the Egyptian gods. So we know that the sun god is... Now, look at this confrontation. You have Ramses and you have Moses. And now look at how the narrative suddenly changes its character. Because Ramses is the demigod. That is, he is the child of the sun god. The man who sees himself as God. I mean, that's how Isaiah portrays him, and so on and so forth. And what is against Ramses? Moses, just a child of slaves. And all of a sudden we see the human drama, or the theological drama, that is being portrayed here. Humiliation of the man who thinks he is the immortal, eternal demigod, child of the sun god. But there is also a clear other reading, another dimension. I mean, Shelley's got it right here, absolutely, that we are being inducted into one of the meanings of Genesis 1:27, that God makes every human being in his image, which means that every human child is holy, including a child of slaves. Every child is a child of God, not just the mightiest emperor of the mightiest empire the ancient world knew. So we begin to see this extraordinary drama between Ramses and Moses, between the one man who thinks, I alone am the child of God, and Moses, who represents a God who regards all human children as his children. That drama is just below the surface, but we have to uncover it. And the Bible gives us that one little hint, which if we're awake, we notice how come it is giving a Hebrew etymology to an Egyptian word.